Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
Did you know that some termites in Africa have a pleasantly minty flavor?
Did you know that India's largest music festival was in a way conceptualized in Estonia?
Did you know that the awesomest chips in the world are found only inside US prisons?
Hello, I'm Chuck.
I'm Srikit.
And I'm Naren.
And together we are
Simplified,
a podcast that helps you appear smarter to an audience that knows no different.
Or give you some stuff to talk about at parties.
We are ultra-crepidarians.
And if you don't know what that means,
Then tune into Simplified with a B on iTunes, Audio Boom, or your favorite podcasting app. Episodes out every fortnight.
You're listening to the OnCourse podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to the OnCourse podcast. OnCourse is a creative and alternate education company that aims to bridge the gap between formal classroom education and real-world skills. We offer a range of programs from short skill-based courses to test prep to application assistance for those looking to study abroad. My name is Akhil Daswani and I'm your co-host for today. I'm a graduate of Northwestern University and the COO and co-founder of OnCourse.
My name is Alisha Mashruwala and I'm the CEO and co-founder of OnCourse, and I graduated from Harvard University with a degree in psychology and economics.
So guys, today we have a really interesting topic that we're going to be covering. We're going to be focusing a lot on art and design schools, and especially in the US, UK and India. So in lieu of that, I wanted to, Alicia, I wanted to ask you, what exactly is art and design? It's a very misunderstood concept.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like it's upcoming as a field, if you ask me. So I typically look at art and design sort of ranging into three broad categories, right? So one is more fine art driven. So that's more like painting and drawing and sketching. The second being your design, which is things like interior design or graphic design, a little bit more on the technical side, not as much in terms of fine art. And the third being architecture. So while architecture is a slightly different field altogether, it's kind of clubbed with art and design when you're applying to colleges abroad as well. And of course, architecture is a little bit more on the technical side of things. So it includes a combination of things like design, a little bit of math, physics, and more technical knowledge that you may need.
That's awesome. Where do you think the best design schools in the world are?
Well, honestly speaking, there's great design schools everywhere, right? It's just a number of design schools that there are kind of vary from country to country. So the big ones that I typically like to consider and talk about are the US, UK, and India. And that's primarily because the US has a very large range of design colleges. The UK is slightly smaller range, but very good for certain fields or certain specializations. And then India is really upcoming in that sense. So we have institutions that are very, very old, but also one of the hardest ones to even get into. And most people who are very creative aspire to get into those.
That's good to hear that we're up and coming. So talking about the US, and you mentioned it's got one of the broadest ranges of art and design colleges. What is the application criteria to get into an art and design school in the US?
So looking at more on the undergraduate level, for the US art and design in terms of criteria, one, of course, the student has to love the subject. They have to be extremely passionate about it. So the kids who've come to me and said, look, I want to go to an art or design college are ones who've, been pretty sure about it for a few years and not something that they're typically debating about, right? When you're applying to the colleges in the US, they do look at your grades though. So that's a misconception where people think that they don't look at your grades as much and it's just about, the portfolio that you submit. So colleges will look at your grades and they're looking at your grades from 9, 10, 11 and 12. So from their angle, they also want to see that upward sloping curve. But in addition to that, a lot of the US colleges will also ask for the SATs from international students. So your SATs are your standardized tests that you might take, which basically test math and English. So this combined, if I had to give it like a weightage, I would say approximately 50% of your application depends on that.
50%?
Yeah. So again, like I said, a lot of people have a misconception that grades aren't important in this case, but 50% of your application is based on that.
Wow.
Yeah. The second thing they will look at is your portfolio. So your portfolio is essentially your artwork. So from their perspective, they don't expect you to know exactly what kind of design you want to go into. So the colleges would rather see kind of a variety. So different things that you do. So whether it's, a few sketches, a few charcoal paintings, a few acrylics, a few oil painting, a little bit of 3D, some installations. So they want to see the diversity in the work that you put in. So your portfolio is going to typically comprise of, your entire gamut of stuff that you've done for the last couple of years. And that's another 50% of the entire application. So these two together make up essentially what an admissions office is going to see.
That's amazing. And what are some of the best U.S. colleges for art and design?
So, of course, a lot of people have heard of Parsons. So Parsons seems to be the common one. But I'll tell you that Parsons is one of the best colleges for fashion, but maybe not necessarily for, fine art or digital. So this Parsons is one of them. School of Visual Arts in New York is amazing as well. Pratt in Brooklyn, which is great. Then you've got RISD, which is kind of one of the aspirational colleges. You've got SAIC, which is in Chicago. Mass College of Art. You've got a few in California, like California College of Art, California Institute of Art. So these are the more, I would say, design-focused schools. But then you also have a lot of academic institutions like Yale, USC, Carnegie Mellon, which have really, really strong fine art programs.
Okay, that's awesome. And let's say I get admitted to one of these courses. How does the course actually work?
So essentially, when you're applying, just, from a portfolio side of things, you will be submitting a good, I would say, 15 to 20 pieces of work that you've done. And these pieces tend to be the final pieces that you do. So it doesn't necessarily have to include a process behind it. It's just the final work that you've done, which is nicely photographed at different angles, because you want to make sure that all of the colors are coming across. You want to make sure that the angle is correct. So that's essentially what your portfolio will contain. When you're in college, though, you typically indicate what you think you might be interested in studying, but there's a lot of flexibility within that as well. So from a college perspective, I feel like it's unfair for a 17-year-old or 18-year-old to know exactly what kind of art or design they want to do. Because you've only been exposed to, whatever you've studied in your curriculum, whether it's the ISC or in the IB, but you've never really stepped out of the box. So a lot of kids go in saying, okay, I want to do fashion. Or a lot of kids go in saying, I really like painting and that's what I want to do. So when you go to college, you can take a range of courses. So you can take fine art, you can take art history, you can take fashion design, you can take textiles, you can take, printmaking, screen, you can take a little bit of sculpture, you can take video, you can take photography. So there's a whole range of subjects you can actually choose from. And then you typically get about a year and a half to decide what type of art and design field you really want to focus on. So in that year and a half, once you've explored, you stepped outside your comfort zone, you've got an idea of what it's like to work in a studio, then you might choose a particular area of study that you want to go into. So what I see is that while a lot of kids come to me and say, okay, I really want to study fashion design, a lot of them don't know what exactly it entails. When they go to college, they realize, okay, it's not just design. I need to know how to stitch. I need to know how to sew. And that's typically things that in India we're not used to. We typically get someone to do that bit of it for us. But when they go there, they realize there's a whole range of things that they haven't even explored in that sense.
That's really interesting, actually. So do you recommend that there's if I'm a 10th grader and I'm really interested in art and design, and I think that's what I may want to, pursue, is there anything you recommend that they do at this stage to sort of get an understanding of what art and design school could be like?
So one thing for sure is that, kind of explore beyond the realm of what they're doing in school. So whatever you're doing in school is part of your curriculum, but you need to kind of find ways to be as creative as possible. Because essentially that's what art is, right? They want to test your creativity. A lot of times when kids are growing up, they tend to copy drawings, they tend to copy sketches. But at this stage, you really need to have a mind of your own. You need to think outside the box, think of a particular theme or a concept that, you feel passionate about and how you would want to express yourself through art with that. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would recommend for a lot of students in grade 10 or 11 is to kind of go through portfolio samples on college websites. So most of the top colleges do have sample portfolios of kids who've been accepted or kids who are actually in the college and maybe applying for, grad school or applying for jobs. They all have their work online. So it's important for them to see what exactly it entails. And the third thing I typically find with art school is it's quite helpful to go for a summer program. Because the summer programs do kind of give you an idea and some perspective of what are the different types of art and design fields you can pursue. It kind of opens up your mind towards different things. You're working with a group of students rather than individually. So everyone's ideas come in, inputs are different. So these are the three main things you could definitely think about in grade 10.
All right, very cool. And coming back to the different types of of fields of study, what really is the difference between art and design and architecture? Because I know this is something which parents ask all the time.
Yeah. So they're actually very, very different, right? So art and design actually does include the interior bit of it. But architecture is a completely different course by itself. So when you're applying for art and design, a lot of it is just, like I said, portfolio and grades and SATs. With architecture, your portfolio, while it may be similar to what you do in art and design, the colleges do need that little bit of math and physics as subjects that you might take in at least grade 9 and 10, and preferably in grade 11 and 12 as well. So the main difference in terms of how the course works, when you go for art and design, it's typically a 4-year program. So you have those couple of years to explore, as I said earlier, and then choose what field you want to get into. When you're going into architecture, you pretty much are, I would say, relatively sure that you want to just get into architecture. So most good architecture programs in the US are 5-year programs. So similar to India in that sense, where you know that for the next few years, that's pretty much all you're going to do. So while you do have that flexibility to take some electives in interiors, some electives in fine art, majority of your course is going to be based on the technical side of it, which is the architecture bit of it instead. So architecture tends to be pretty rigorous, and a lot of students who do go into it, they do tend to switch their mind because, again, they're not sure what they're getting into before they go there.
Awesome. I think let's switch over to the UK now. So what is the difference between the whole process or the application process for the US and the UK?
Completely different. So in terms of applying to the UK, while your base and your core elements remain pretty much the same. So say, for example, you're applying to, University of Arts in London, which includes things like Central St. Martin's, London College of Fashion, Chelsea College of Arts, so great institutions there as well. They are going to look at your grades, but your grades here are going to be your 10th final results and your 12th grade predicted results. So they will still give you a conditional offer based on what you should be achieving in your final 12th grade results. So a little different from the US that looks at your 9th and 11th grade equally, right? There's no SAT requirement in this case, but your portfolio is again that other 50% of what they're considering. Your portfolio though in the UK varies a little bit from the US. So while in the US you have those 15 or 20 images that you put as final pieces in your portfolio, in the UK it's more process-based portfolio. That's what they call it. So you have to include aspects of your sketchbook. So, your ideation, your reason behind a particular piece, your mood board, your inspiration. So everything that kind of culminated in that final piece that you have. So instead of 15 pieces, they will look at about 6 to 8 projects as such. So each project will have about 3 or 4 slides just based on, the process behind each of that and what the concept is behind each of it as well. A lot of the UK colleges do prefer you do interviews, because the interviews give them a good idea of whether the work is actually done by you and also what mindset you're in as an artist as well.
That's amazing. I know that a lot of kids who are applying to the UK get really caught up in the whole process portfolio bit. But how different is the architecture process? So
architecture in the UK is actually a little bit different because they do want to see a little bit more architecture-based work that you do as well. However, with architecture in the UK, it's the 3-year program that you're doing. So it's more on the academic side and a little less on the design side.
Why is that so? Why is it a 3-year program in the UK and a 5-year in the US?
So what happens in the US is it's a combination of the academic side and the design side. In the UK, when you do your 3 years of architecture, you're still not completely, you're still not completely qualified to be an architect. You still have to go through a couple of exams that you do. It could be an additional master's program that you do to actually be able to practice architecture. So ultimately, it leads into the same thing. It ultimately leads into sort of a 5-year degree before you start practicing architecture. So a little different in that sense. But UK with architecture, it's very difficult to change your mind. So when you go into architecture, once you start your first year, there's no turning back. There's no saying, okay, now I want to switch to interior design, or now I want to switch to, fine art. Whereas with art and design in the UK, what happens is a lot of colleges have a foundation year. So your foundation year essentially is 1 year that you spend at the college, kind of getting an insight into different aspects of art and design. Yet, once the year is over, then you need to decide exactly what you want to do within art and design. And then for the next 3 years, that's typically all you're doing. So the UK, while inflexible with a lot of other courses, with art it's still relatively more flexible just because it gives you that foundation year to kind of bounce off.
So I think, obviously with the coming up of like Apple and all these other sort of design-based companies, a lot of people have been asking questions on product design, right? So if you could just tell us a little bit about what product design really is, how do you study product design, and how does a kid really build skills in that?
So yes, that is an upcoming field. I think product design is one of them. Graphic design is another one. Both are very, very big these days. And there's one third one, which is called visual communications. So essentially every company these days has like a more visual angle to it, right? So whether it's attracting consumers through that, whether it's actually innovating products. So that's exactly what product design would entail. So you go there, you ideate a particular product. It could be something which is more useful. It could be a modification of an existing product, or it could be completely different altogether, right? So that's typically what they will end up studying. So they're not going to be doing too much of just pure fine art, but a lot of what they're going to do is going to be sketch work and then implementing that sketch work onto software online. So that software online typically is going to be something like an AutoCAD or, Corel Draw, any of those, which are important skills for any kid to do as well. So even when I guide students who do want to apply for anything related to products, graphics, visual communications, I do recommend that they take a few classes in Photoshop, Corel Draw, AutoCAD before they go to college, just so that they're kind of not behind the curve when they're out there, and this is one question I feel like a lot of parents used to be skeptical about. So if my kid studies art and design, sort of, what are the job prospects? What are the job opportunities that they have?
I think that's the perennial Indian parent question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's changing because you see like anyone who is into the design field is making a lot more money now than they probably did earlier. And that's because technology has sort of come up a lot in that sense.
Amazing. And I think that brings me to the last segment of this, which is India, of course.
Yeah.
What is the overview of the Indian art and design field? How is that growing? What does someone take to sort of get into an art institute in India?
So art in India, like I said, it's upcoming, right? There are a couple of colleges, for example, NID, NIFT, CEPT, all of these, which are really, really hard to get into. And these are aspirational colleges for everyone. So if you were to ask me, I would say it's easier to get into one of the top UK or US-based art and design colleges than it is to get into an NID, a NIFT, or a CEPT. So that's kind of the perception that a lot of people have. With a lot of art programs in India, though, the only downside is sometimes they don't offer an entire degree course. So they have a diploma, which sometimes can become a problem when you're applying for a master's program. However, most of the colleges, whether it's a JJ Institute or Shrishti or, like I said, NID or even ISD Parsons now, which is upcoming for sure, Pearl Academy, a lot of kids are actually considering these options just because they do build a pretty strong foundation overall. The only thing is in India, you typically have to know exactly what you're doing within art and design. So you need to have, I would say, about an 80% insurance saying, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to study fine art, or I want to study graphics, or I want to study product design. It's a little harder to switch your mind when you're there. It's a little less flexible, and the range of courses is a little less in overall sense. But when you're applying for an art program in India, for example, the process is going to be similar to the US and UK. You still need good grades, and you still need a portfolio or an interview or an admissions test. So that's kind of split into, I would say, architecture and art and design.
But then the big question is, if it's up and coming and it requires the same, requirement, it has the same requirements. Does it make sense for parents to spend so much money to send their kids to the US or to the UK if they can send them to a good, art and design institute here?
Two reasons I would say you need to kind of keep the option open is, one, when you go abroad, you get a very different perspective. So you're in a college with people from all over the world, people with different backgrounds, and that international exposure, especially in the field of art and design, can be really, really beneficial. Because a lot of times the US and UK universities have a lot of technology, which right now the Indian colleges don't have as yet. So that's one. The second thing I would say is getting into these Indian colleges is almost impossible. So you need a second plan, you need a backup option where you don't want that drop off in your education quality to be that much. So I think that's the important thing, right? Because people are preparing for their NID entrance exams for a couple of years, but there's no guarantee you're going to get into that NID.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alicia. This was really, really informative, and I think is educational for all the listeners. For all the listeners, please log on to our website at www.oncourseglobal.com to find out more about us, and like us on our Facebook page and our Instagram, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcasts, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcast galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.